Now, on to today's first book, Declan O'Rourke's literary debut, the story of the O'Buchala family as they face their most perilous winter, and woven into a powerful account of the famine's grip on one Irish town. This meticulously researched, multi-layered work tells the story of Macroom's residents of all class and creed, including the local pawnbroker, Cornelius Creed. It's the pawnbroker's reward. Now, Nadine, you'll have to tell us all about this book. I know you were reading it for us.
Yes, all I can say is thank God it's good, because it's over 450 pages. So when it arrived, there was that sort of trepidation that you have when you go, oh goodness, because it's a debut novel from Declan O'Rourke, very well known, of course, for his work as a singer-songwriter. Galileo is such a classic song. And this book was inspired actually by an album he released in 2017, which was a song saga centering on famine times. He had done some research, read 20 books plus on the famine, partly because his own grandfather actually had been born in a workhouse, and he had found that out and decided to investigate further. This book is the consequence of that. It's beautifully written, very painterly, very vivid. And of course, the subject matter is harrowing. It's Macroom in the 1840s. It's the story of Pádraig and Cauldron, their two children who are just trying to survive. And it's also the story of Cornelius Creed, the pawnbroker, who worries that even as he's trying to help the poor, he's also potentially taking advantage of them.
Sounds like an incredible story, and I guess growing up we've all heard so much about the famine from our grandparents, and I think it's really important to keep these stories alive as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Skibbereen, and just down the road from our house there's a graveyard with a space in it which is just dedicated to the people whose bodies were thrown in there in that time. And every time I would pass that graveyard, I would think about it. Skibbereen was one of the hardest hit towns during the famine. So for me, reading this book had huge resonance, because Declan O'Rourke has done phenomenal research. So everything that he's writing about, yes, this is fiction, but it's based on real life stories, real people who were there in the 1840s and who lost their lives. So for me, it was a very powerful work.
And I suppose for him as well, going over from music to author, like how did you find that change?
I was actually really, really pleasantly surprised. And it's not to say, of course, I'd always rate his songwriting, but often you can see somebody who's good in one art form, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they will continue on to be good in another. But he proves himself so capable here. The sentences really sing. It is a long book, and there are times when you feel like, okay, you can sense he's struggling a little bit towards the end to wrap everything up in a neat bow, but he's also a debut author, so that's only to be expected. I thought it was just such a promising debut, and it's such a great harbinger for the future of what he might produce.
I know it'll be interesting to see, will he stay going down the kind of historical route, or will he go into something more, more novel-like in time to come?
Yeah, well, in terms of who I'd compare him to, I think you could think of people like, say, Sebastian Barry, who also actually work in the area of historical fiction, and I could see him going forward and telling more stories that are rooted in fact, but that he weaves a fiction around them. I think he's started a whole great new career for himself.
And as we said, we all know about the famine growing up. So while you're reading the book, did you feel like he was able to bring you back into that moment?
Yeah, and it's in the small details. He has a way of describing people's faces, of the smells in the streets, of what it feels like to be in the poorhouse, or how other people are looking on as someone gets the small meagre ration of a griddle cake, and the hunger is etched on their face. At a certain point, Pádraig goes working the roads in order to sustain his family. So he's doing back-breaking labour, walking 7 miles plus a day for the meagre sum of 6 pence a day, and all these tiny details root you in that reality. It's really beautifully achieved.
Declan O'Rourke's debut book, and really looking forward to reading that one as well. Nadine O'Regan, thank you so much for that.